The air hung thick with the scent of lilies and regret, the heavy perfume doing little to mask the metallic tang of crimson that clung to my skin. My hands trembled, stained with a vibrant red, as I stared at the closed casket. They were all there, their faces masks of sorrow, but I saw the triumph lurking beneath. They thought they had won. They thought they had silenced me forever. They were wrong. If you cherish the bond you share with your sister, subscribe now. My name is Charlotte Dixon, and until recently, I was the CEO of a global tech empire, a position I clawed my way to from nothing. Years I poured into building that company, sacrificing everything for its success. I trusted those around me, or so I thought. My son, Michael, always seemed supportive, eager to learn the ropes of the business. My head of legal, Sarah, had been my confidant for years, the one I turned to for advice, the sister I never had. We were a team, a family, or so I believed. It started subtly, small decisions being made without my input, meetings scheduled that I wasn't informed about. At first, I dismissed it as oversight, a sign of my growing team finally taking initiative. But then the whispers started, the sideways glances, the feeling of being excluded from conversations. I began to dig, using my own resources to uncover what was happening behind my back. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Michael, my own flesh and blood, was colluding with Sarah and several board members to have me declared incompetent, to seize control of the company and my fortune. The evidence was irrefutable: forged documents, secret bank accounts, even testimonies from doctors they had bribed to testify against my mental state. They painted me as unstable, erratic, unfit to lead the company I had built from the ground up. I was furious, betrayed beyond words, but I knew I couldn't confront them directly. They were too powerful, too well prepared. So I played along, feigning ignorance, acting as if nothing was amiss. I needed time to gather my own evidence, to plan my counterattack. It was a dangerous game, but I was determined to expose their treachery and reclaim what was rightfully mine. I had to be smart, calculating, and utterly ruthless. They saw me as a weak, vulnerable woman, easily manipulated. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The pressure mounted daily. Michael's attempts to undermine my authority grew bolder, more brazen. He started making public statements contradicting my decisions, overruling my directives, even going so far as to publicly question my judgment. Sarah, once my closest ally, now avoided eye contact. Her voice strained whenever she was forced to speak to me. The board meetings became a battleground, each vote a carefully orchestrated attempt to strip me of my power. I fought back as best I could, but I was outnumbered, outmaneuvered at every turn. The stress was immense, the constant anxiety gnawing at me, threatening to consume me. I barely slept, haunted by nightmares of losing everything, of being stripped of my dignity and left with nothing. I was walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from falling into the abyss. Then came the day that changed everything. I overheard a hushed conversation between Michael and Sarah in the company parking garage. They were discussing my health, my deteriorating mental state. Michael spoke of accelerating their plan, of forcing me out sooner rather than later. "She's becoming too much of a liability," he said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "We need to act quickly before she realizes what's happening." Sarah agreed, her voice equally chilling. "I've already spoken to the doctors. They're ready to sign off on the documents whenever we give the word." That's when I knew I was in real danger. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about silencing me permanently. I had to act fast before it was too late. The person I trusted most was one of them. The walls of my lavish office began to feel like they were closing in, the mahogany desk a barrier between me and a world that was rapidly turning against me. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the hallway fueled my paranoia. I'd find myself bolt upright in bed, heart hammering, convinced that Michael or Sarah were standing over me, ready to put an end to my reign, to my life. I started double-locking my doors, installing security cameras, turning my home into a fortress. But no matter how many precautions I took, the feeling of vulnerability persisted, a constant gnawing fear that refused to dissipate. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on me, suffocating me, stealing my breath. I tried to confide in old friends, trusted advisors, but they seemed hesitant, unsure of who to believe. Michael and Sarah had already poisoned the well, planting seeds of doubt, painting me as a woman on the verge of a breakdown. My attempts to rally support were met with polite smiles and empty promises. I was alone, isolated, fighting a battle that seemed increasingly impossible to win. Desperate, I turned to the legal system, hoping to find some recourse, some way to protect myself and my company. But the lawyers I consulted were wary, intimidated by Michael's power and influence. They spoke of lengthy court battles, of the immense legal fees, of the high probability of failure. "It's an uphill battle, Charlotte," one of them told me, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "They have too much power, too much money. You're better off cutting your losses and walking away." But walking away wasn't an option. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about principle, about reclaiming my life, about ensuring that Michael and Sarah didn't get away with their treachery. I refused to surrender, refused to let them win. I started meticulously documenting everything, every suspicious transaction, every secret meeting, every lie they had told. I spent hours poring over financial records, emails, and phone logs, searching for evidence that would expose their scheme. It was a painstaking process, a race against time, but I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The strain was immense. I lost weight, my skin grew pale, and dark circles formed under my eyes. I became a shadow of my former self, consumed by the need for revenge. One evening, while working late in my office, I stumbled upon a hidden file on Sarah's computer. It contained a series of encrypted emails detailing their plans to transfer my assets to offshore accounts, to sell off company shares, to completely dismantle everything I had built. The emails also revealed a disturbing detail. They had been planning this for years, meticulously laying the groundwork for my downfall. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a carefully orchestrated plot, hatched long ago by the people I had trusted most. My anger surged, a fiery inferno threatening to consume me. I wanted to confront them, to scream at them, to demand an explanation. But I knew I couldn't. I had to remain calm, composed, to play my cards carefully. I copied the files onto a secure drive, knowing that they held the key to exposing their treachery. But I also knew that simply presenting the evidence wouldn't be enough. Michael and Sarah were too powerful, too well connected. I needed a plan, a strategy that would not only expose their crimes, but also ensure that they faced the consequences for their actions. I needed to find their weakness, the chink in their armor that would bring their entire empire crashing down. They thought they were untouchable. That was their biggest mistake. The day they tried to end me was the day revenge was born. They had taken everything from me. My company, my reputation, my dignity. I was alone, adrift, with no clear path forward. The following days were a blur of legal battles, media scrutiny, and personal attacks. Michael and Sarah launched a full-scale smear campaign, painting me as a paranoid, unstable woman who was unfit to run a company. They leaked damaging information to the press, fabricated stories about my personal life, and even questioned my sanity in court. The media frenzy was relentless, hounding me day and night, twisting my words and portraying me as a villain. I became a pariah, shunned by former friends and colleagues, ostracized from the world I had once inhabited. My phone stopped ringing, my emails went unanswered, and my social media accounts were flooded with hate messages. I was isolated, alone, with no one to turn to. I stayed locked in my mansion, curtains drawn, the sunlight a painful reminder of what I had lost. I became a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the ghosts of my past, consumed by anger, despair, and a gnawing sense of injustice. One particularly bleak evening, I found myself standing on the balcony of my penthouse suite, staring out at the city lights below. The wind whipped around me, carrying with it the sounds of the city, the distant sirens, the muffled roar of traffic. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching my life unfold from a distance. The temptation to simply let go, to end it all, was overwhelming. The darkness whispered promises of peace, of escape from the pain and humiliation. It would be so easy, so simple, to just step over the edge and disappear. But then, a flicker of defiance ignited within me, a spark of resolve that refused to be extinguished. I thought of my father, who had taught me to never give up, to always fight for what was right. I thought of all the sacrifices I had made, the years of hard work I had poured into building my company. And I thought of Michael and Sarah, their smug faces, their cold, calculating eyes. The thought of them winning, of them getting away with their treachery, filled me with a burning rage. No, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I wouldn't let them break me. I would fight back. I would expose their lies, and I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. The crimson of the sunset bled across the sky, a final, defiant burst of color before the darkness descended. As I stood there, on the edge of the abyss, I made a vow to myself. I would not be a victim. I would be a survivor. I would become their worst nightmare. The days of playing nice were over. It was time to unleash my fury. They had awakened the sleeping giant, and they were about to pay the price. I turned away from the balcony, a newfound sense of purpose hardening my resolve. The tears dried on my face, replaced by a steely gaze. The fear that had consumed me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a cold, calculating determination. I went back inside, to my study, and sat down at my desk. The room was filled with stacks of documents, financial records, and legal briefs, the remnants of my failed attempts to fight back through conventional means. I swept them all aside, clearing the desk, creating a blank canvas for my new plan. I started by making a list of my assets, my resources, the things that Michael and Sarah couldn't take away from me. I had my intelligence, my cunning, my unwavering determination. I had a network of contacts, people who had been loyal to me for years, who were willing to help me, even if it meant risking their own careers. And I had the evidence, the encrypted files that I had copied from Sarah's computer. The game had changed. I wasn't going to fight them on their terms, in their arena. I was going to create my own battlefield, where I held all the cards. I would use their arrogance, their greed, and their ruthlessness against them. I would exploit their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, and their hidden secrets. I would expose their lies, their treachery, and their corruption to the world. And I would make them pay for what they had done to me, tenfold. I spent the next several weeks in seclusion, meticulously planning my counterattack. I studied their every move, analyzed their strengths and weaknesses, and identified their vulnerabilities. I reached out to my contacts, gathering information, building alliances, and laying the groundwork for my plan. I transformed myself from a victim into a strategist, from a target into a hunter. The woman they had tried to break was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more resilient, and more dangerous. They thought they had silenced me forever. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. My smile was a whisper of cold promise in the dark, because the plan had begun. I began my transformation in the digital shadows. I wasn't going to burst into flames. I was going to simmer until they were ashes. My first call was to Javier, a man whose past was as checkered as a Formula One racetrack. He owed me a favor, a big one, from a situation I'd quietly resolved years ago involving some missing funds and a very unhappy foreign investor. Javier was a master of digital forensics, a ghost in the machine, capable of extracting secrets from the most tightly guarded servers. I needed him to delve deep into Michael's and Sarah's financial records, to trace the flow of money, to uncover the offshore accounts and shell corporations they were using to hide their assets. Find everything, I told him, my voice low and steady. Leave no stone unturned. Javier was expensive, but he was worth every penny. He worked quickly and discreetly, leaving no trace of his presence. Within days, he had provided me with a treasure trove of information, a detailed map of their illicit activities. The documents confirmed my suspicions. Michael and Sarah had been systematically siphoning funds from the company for years, lining their own pockets while driving the company to the brink of destruction. They had established a network of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Panama, concealing their ill-gotten gains from the tax authorities. They had also been using shell corporations to purchase luxury properties, private jets, and other extravagant items. The evidence was damning, irrefutable proof of their guilt. But I needed more than just financial records. I needed to understand their motivations, their weaknesses, their deepest fears. For that, I turned to Olivia, a former private investigator who had worked for me on several sensitive matters in the past. Olivia was a master of surveillance, capable of tracking anyone, anywhere, without being detected. I tasked her with monitoring Michael's and Sarah's every move, to observe their interactions, to listen to their conversations, to uncover their secrets. I want to know everything about them, I told her, their routines, their habits, their relationships. Find out what makes them tick, what scares them the most. Olivia was relentless in her pursuit of information. She planted hidden cameras in their offices, tapped their phones, and even infiltrated their social circles. She discovered that Michael was a gambling addict, deeply in debt to some very dangerous people. He had been using company funds to cover his losses, and he was desperate to keep his addiction a secret. Sarah, on the other hand, was driven by an insatiable hunger for power. She craved recognition, admiration, and control. She had always been jealous of my success, and she saw my downfall as an opportunity to finally step out of my shadow. The information Olivia provided was invaluable. It gave me a clear understanding of their motivations and weaknesses, and it helped me to develop a plan that would exploit their vulnerabilities. I decided to take a walk to the parking garage after working past midnight at the office. I needed to see the place with my own eyes where I had overheard their betrayal. The garage was dimly lit and mostly empty. As I walked through the rows of parked cars, I spotted a familiar figure lurking in the shadows. It was a security guard, a man named Tony who had worked for the company for many years. I had always liked Tony. He was a hardworking and loyal employee. "Tony," I said, "what are you doing here so late?" Tony looked startled, as if he had been caught doing something he shouldn't be doing. "Mrs. Dixon," he stammered. I was just making my rounds." I studied his face, and I could see that he was lying. "Tony," I said, my voice firm, "I need your help. I know what Michael and Sarah have been doing, and I need you to tell me everything you know." Tony hesitated for a moment. Then he sighed. "I can't, Mrs. Dixon," he said. "They would end me." I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "This is for you, Tony," I said. "It's enough to take care of your family for a long time." Tony's eyes widened as he looked at the envelope. He reached out and took it, his hands trembling. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. I smiled. "Tell me everything," I said. Tony proceeded to tell me everything he knew about Michael's and Sarah's scheme. He confirmed that they had been systematically siphoning funds from the company, and he provided me with additional details about their offshore accounts and shell corporations. He also told me that they had been bribing government officials to turn a blind eye to their activities. The information Tony provided was the final piece of the puzzle. I now had everything I needed to expose their treachery and bring them to justice. But I knew that I couldn't act rashly. I had to be patient, strategic, and utterly ruthless. Michael and Sarah had tried to end me, and they were about to learn that revenge is a dish best served cold. I set up a hidden recording studio in my mansion, soundproofed and equipped with state-of-the-art audio and video equipment. I hired a team of lawyers and public relations specialists to help me craft my message and prepare for the inevitable media storm. I knew that when I finally exposed Michael and Sarah, the world would be watching. I needed to make sure that my message was clear, concise, and compelling.
I spent hours rehearsing my speech, perfecting my delivery, and anticipating their every move. I knew that they would try to discredit me, to attack my character, and to paint me as a vindictive, unstable woman. I had to be prepared to defend myself, to counter their lies with the truth, and to expose their hypocrisy. As the day of my public announcement drew closer, I felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I was eager to finally expose Michael and Sarah for who they really were, but I was also nervous about the potential consequences. I knew that they would stop at nothing to protect themselves, and I was prepared for a long and difficult battle, but I was also confident that I would win. I had the truth on my side, and I had the unwavering support of my loyal allies. The day they tried to end me was the day revenge was born. I had embraced the shadows, mastered the art of deception, and was about to unleash a storm they never saw coming.
They thought they were so clever, untouchable in their fortress of greed. But every fortress has a weakness, a crack in the wall waiting to be exploited. Mine was discovering Sarah's obsession, her Achilles heel. It wasn't money, although she loved that too. It was recognition. She wanted to be seen as a visionary, a leader, a titan of industry. She secretly wrote a blog under a pseudonym, Athena Rising, where she pontificated on business strategy and leadership principles. The blog had a small but dedicated following, mostly other ambitious women eager to climb the corporate ladder. Sarah poured her heart and soul into that blog, crafting each post with painstaking care, desperate to be seen as an intellectual force. And that's when I knew. That was it. I would use her own words against her. I hired a team of expert hackers to infiltrate the blog's server and gain access to Sarah's account. It was surprisingly easy. Sarah, for all her supposed intelligence, had terrible password security. Within hours, we had complete control of Athena Rising. I didn't want to simply delete the blog or expose her identity. That would be too obvious, too crude. I wanted to use it to lure her into a trap, to expose her hypocrisy and her treachery to her adoring fans. I began by subtly altering the tone of the blog, shifting it from inspirational to subtly unhinged. I started posting articles that seemed insightful on the surface, but were laced with veiled references to greed, ambition, and the ruthless pursuit of power. I wrote about the importance of eliminating obstacles and seizing opportunities, using language that was just ambiguous enough to be plausible, but also hinted at something darker. The response was immediate. Sarah's followers ate it up, praising her bold and unconventional approach to leadership. They had no idea that they were being subtly manipulated, that they were being led down a path of moral ambiguity. As the weeks went by, I gradually increased the intensity of the blog posts, pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable. I wrote about the need to sacrifice for success, about the importance of crushing your enemies, and about the futility of morality in the cutthroat world of business. I even started posting fictional case studies of companies that had achieved greatness through unethical means, praising their innovative and bold strategies. The comment section of the blog exploded with debate. Some readers expressed concern about the increasingly dark tone of the blog, while others defended Sarah's right to express her opinions, no matter how controversial. Sarah herself remained silent, watching from the shadows as her blog became a battleground for competing ideologies. She couldn't resist the attention, the controversy. It was feeding her ego, validating her sense of self-importance. She was walking right into my trap. I knew that the time was ripe to spring my trap. I decided to organize a live online seminar, a virtual event where Sarah would answer questions from her followers and share her wisdom with the world. I promoted the seminar heavily on social media, promising a no-holds-barred discussion of the challenges facing modern leaders. I knew that Sarah wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to showcase her brilliance on a global stage. I prepared a series of questions for her, carefully crafted to expose her hypocrisy and her treachery. I also enlisted the help of some of my allies, who agreed to pose as audience members and ask their own pointed questions. The stage was set. The trap was baited. All that was left was to wait for Sarah to walk into it. The day of the seminar arrived, and I watched from my hidden studio as Sarah appeared on the screen, beaming with confidence. She looked every inch the visionary leader, dressed in a power suit, her hair perfectly coiffed, her eyes sparkling with ambition. Hundreds of people from all over the world had tuned in to watch her speak. I felt a surge of anticipation, a sense of triumph. The moment of reckoning was at hand. The seminar began innocently enough, with Sarah delivering a prepared speech about the importance of innovation and resilience. She spoke eloquently and passionately, captivating her audience with her charisma and her seemingly boundless energy. But then, the questions started coming in. The first few questions were softball, easy pitches that Sarah effortlessly knocked out of the park. But then, I stepped in. Using a fake account, I posed a question about the ethical implications of pursuing profits at all costs. Sarah paused for a moment, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. But she quickly recovered, launching into a carefully rehearsed speech about the importance of balancing profit with social responsibility. Sarah squirmed in her seat, her composure beginning to crack. She tried to deflect the question, but I wouldn't let her off the hook. I kept pressing her, pushing her, until she was forced to reveal her true colors. And then my allies chimed in, asking their own pointed questions about her past business dealings, about the rumors of financial impropriety, about the allegations of mistreating employees. Sarah became increasingly flustered, her voice trembling, her face turning red. She tried to deny the allegations, but her denials rang hollow. The audience could see that she was lying. And then I played my trump card. I released the encrypted files that I had copied from her computer, the files that contained irrefutable proof of her treachery. The files were displayed on the screen for all to see, exposing her offshore accounts, her shell corporations, her secret deals. Sarah's face went white. She stared at the screen in horror, her eyes wide with disbelief. She knew that she had been caught. She knew that her career, her reputation, her entire life was about to come crashing down around her. "There seems to be some technical difficulties," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I think we need to take a short break." She reached for the power button, desperate to shut down the seminar, to escape the nightmare that was unfolding before her eyes. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The truth had been revealed, and the world was watching. But just as I was relishing her downfall, Michael appeared on the screen, shoving Sarah aside. His face was contorted with rage, his eyes burning with hatred. "You witch," he screamed, his voice echoing through the studio. "You thought you could get away with this? You thought you could destroy us?" He lunged at the camera, his hand outstretched, as if he could somehow reach through the screen and silence me. "I'll end you for this," he roared. "I'll make you pay." The screen went black. The seminar was over, but the battle had just begun. They thought they could intimidate me, silence me. They were wrong. This was war. The screen went black, but the silence was short-lived. My phone erupted with notifications, emails, texts, news alerts. The world had seen it all. Sarah's carefully constructed image was shattered, replaced by the ugly reality of her greed and ambition. Michael's outburst only confirmed their guilt. He'd shown his true face. The news media swarmed, hungry for details. My team was ready, armed with evidence and a clear narrative. I was the victim, they were the perpetrators. The narrative was simple, undeniable. The following days were a whirlwind. Law enforcement agencies launched investigations, probing their financial dealings, their business practices, every aspect of their lives. Sarah was immediately removed from her position, her reputation in tatters. Her blog, Athena Rising, was taken down, a monument to her shattered dreams. Michael fared no better. His gambling debts were exposed, his creditors closing in. He faced potential criminal charges, the prospect of years behind bars looming over him. Their empire crumbled. The company stock plummeted, investors fled, and the business they had tried to steal was now worth a fraction of what it had been. I watched it all unfold, a sense of cold satisfaction washing over me. They had tried to take everything from me, to erase me from existence. Now, they were the ones facing obliteration. The personal toll on them was immense. I heard whispers of their crumbling marriage, the accusations, the recriminations. Their friends deserted them. Their social circles vanished. They were pariahs, shunned and despised. Sarah, once so confident and ambitious, was now a shadow of her former self. I saw a picture of her online, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow, a stark contrast to the polished image she had so carefully cultivated. Michael, driven to the brink by debt and despair, made a desperate attempt to flee the country, but he was apprehended at the airport, his escape thwarted. The legal battles were long and arduous, but the evidence was overwhelming. They were found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and a host of other charges. The judge sentenced them to significant prison terms, their lives effectively over. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to see them humiliated. I knew that their punishment was far greater than any court could impose. They had lost everything: their freedom, their reputation, their wealth, their relationships. They were utterly and completely destroyed. In the aftermath, I rebuilt my company, stronger and more resilient than before. I surrounded myself with loyal and trustworthy people, those who had stood by me during the darkest days. I learned a valuable lesson about trust, about betrayal, and about the importance of protecting myself. The scars of their treachery remained, but they served as a constant reminder of what I had overcome. Some people asked me if I felt any remorse, any pity for Sarah and Michael. I didn't. They had shown me no mercy, and I owed them none. They had made their choices, and they had to live with the consequences. I had simply given them what they deserved. The day they tried to end me was the day they ended themselves. I just helped them along the way. The company thrived, exceeding even my pre-betrayal numbers. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of calculated revenge. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's a primal instinct, a way of restoring balance when justice fails. It's not about hatred or malice. It's about self-preservation. It's about sending a message. Cross me, and you will pay the price. My journey was long and arduous, filled with pain, betrayal, and uncertainty. But in the end, I emerged victorious. I reclaimed my life, my company, and my dignity. And I silenced those who dared to underestimate me. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more stories of justice served.